resources, inspiring interviews, business practices, and practical advice to take your art career to the next level. Join Sergio Gomez in today's Artist Next Level and get ready to take control of your career.
Well, hello, my next level friends. Hope you're having a wonderful day. This episode is brought to you by the Our Next Level Strategic Group, where we provide answers, resources, and support for your biggest challenges as a contemporary artist. And we do this through an online membership community you can always count on. And if you want to know how to join this community, just visit us online at www.theartistnextlevel.com. Well, today I have a wonderful interview I want to share with you with artist Justin Vining. And he shares with us how to build a sustainable art career from the ground up. It's really a fascinating story you want to pay attention to. Justin Vining is an Indianapolis-based artist. He specializes in landscapes and cityscapes. Justin studied art education at Purdue University and taught elementary art for 3 years. Following his tenure as a teacher, Justin attended Valparaiso Law School, where he rekindled his love for creating between classes and clerking. Shortly after graduating and passing the bar in 2010, Justin decided to pursue art full-time and hasn't looked back since. He's originally from a small town in Indiana. Justin finds inspiration from American regionalist painters and WPA-era public works. In his progress as a full-time artist, his work has evolved from bright, whimsical watercolors and acrylics to more classical oil scenes. In his exploration of oils, he's begun working on plein air and exploring more muted, natural tones. Justin has a long list of accomplishments from solo shows, group shows, public art and private collections, media appearances, and much more. And I'm really excited to share with you my interview with Justin Vining. Hey Justin, good morning. How are you today?
I am doing great. How are you?
I am doing fantastic. I am so glad that you are able to join us today in our Next Level podcast. And are you ready to take us to the next level?
I am.
Great, man. Great. Well, Justin, you are in Indianapolis, Indiana. We're here in Chicago, and it's great to be connected this morning through here the technology and recording this podcast, which is going to be an amazing conversation with you. And inviting our friends to stay around because there's going to be a lot of value in this conversation, as well as how you built your art career from the ground up. And I believe that each artist story is unique, is different. The story of one doesn't always apply to the other one. Through the uniqueness of each individual story, we can create our very own. And that's what this podcast is all about, to sharing those stories. So, Justin, we haven't actually met face-to-face, but we haven't been in contact actually throughout the years through Facebook and other mediums. So it's nice to now hear your voice here.
It totally is. It is great to finally connect because I've been following your work since probably 2009-ish.
That is cool, man. That's cool. And we love Indianapolis. We go there quite often there too, and actually have family there too. So it's kind of a nice little getaway that we do once in a while. So it's a beautiful city as well. How long have you been in Indianapolis?
So I have been back in Indy right at 7 years. 7 years. So
okay.
Yeah, give or take a little. So it's my second stint in Indianapolis.
Uh-huh.
So I love the city.
So Justin, let's have a little conversation about how you first became an artist. Maybe take us back to your childhood. How did you get interested in art, and how was that road for you?
Yeah, so I'm a farm kid from northern Indiana, and when I was growing up, I really thought I was probably just going to become a farmer. But in high school, I decided I did not want to be a farmer, and when I was thinking about cool occupations or what I wanted to be, I had a genuine interest in art, and I was like, I'm going to go be an art teacher. So that's exactly what I did. I went to Purdue University undergrad for art education, and I graduated and came out and was an elementary school art teacher for 3 years. And I loved that job. I really did. But even at that time, I never thought I would ever become a full-time painter. I mean, that was not something that was on my horizon at all. And during my third year of teaching, my route to becoming a full-time painter is extremely non-traditional. I ended up going to law school.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah. And so I went to law school with my little brother in Valparaiso, Indiana,
Uh-huh.
outside of Chicago. And a whole long story short, we don't have time to really get into too much, is during my first semester of law school, I started selling art on the side to help pay bills. And that was 2007. And I had, some of my friends had just gotten their dual degrees with their MBAs. And they suggested I start doing pay advertising on Facebook. And, this is way back in the day where it cost pennies. I mean,
Right.
literally pennies to pay advertise on Facebook. And during my 3 years of law school, I ended up spending thousands of dollars paid advertising, selling art, and specifically in that Northwest Indiana, Chicago market. And I ended up going to law school. I am a licensed attorney in the state of Indiana. I keep my license active, but I came out a painter. I sold over 400 pieces during my 3 years of law school, and it was one of the most unexpected things that could have happened. And so
that's a great story. That's awesome. So, what kind of work were you advertising and were you selling?
So my work at that time was very influenced by my time as an elementary school art teacher. So it was very whimsical, tons of color, movement, lots of primary and secondary color. A lot of people suggested it looked a little bit like maybe Dr. Seuss or Tim Burton,
Okay.
but maybe with a little bit more of a rural Midwestern farmer slant. I was painting Midwest landscapes. But one of the prints I actually sold the most and original pieces were Chicago skyline pieces,
Okay.
really whimsical ones with just tons of curve and movement. So that was my bread and butter.
That's very cool. Now, how did you first kind of realize this was a potential market for you? What was that experience of putting the first ad maybe and trying and testing until you realize, wait a minute, there's something here, and then actually putting in more money into that?
Well, it wasn't. It was organic over time, and I must have done easily 100 different experiments with images and different calls to action, trying to figure out what's actually going to convert the best. And I never, through all the experimenting and all the money spent, I never found one true like workhorse that was. It was more, some worked, some didn't. Some worked a little bit better than others. Some didn't work at all. And just the whole thing was a learning process. And I pretty much did that until I graduated law school. And even at that time, with I think my online following between Twitter and Facebook had sort of organically grown to about 25,000 followers at that point. For a relatively unknown artist in the middle of Indiana, I mean that's a very, very powerful number to leverage. And so I leveraged it to make sales. And I still never thought that being a full-time artist was going to be my end game. I thought that it was just I don't know. And part of the reason why I don't think I gave it very much credit is I think because society just ingrains that what we do is this most impossible task that's ever been done. And I just never gave it much of a chance as, the real, this is what I'm going to do and be. After I graduated, I ended up getting a real job. That's what brought me back to Indianapolis.
Okay.
I was a corporate headhunter, and we were doing outside recruiting for Red Bull, the energy drink company. And so I worked there for 7 months, and, having an online business, you disappear for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, you disappear for 6 months. I mean, all that momentum I could feel it leaving. And I think that was really the moment where I was just like, I felt like I could balance, driving a business, making art sales, making art, in the real world, but it just wasn't possible. I mean, I feel like it's an all or nothing thing. I mean, you've got to go in head first. And so, 7 months back in the real world, I just quit that job, and that was 6 years ago. And so,
Oh, wow. So you just quit cold turkey and just switch gears.
Totally. And
Wow.
it's, that first year was, it was a struggle. I mean, and
Yeah.
not just financially, but emotionally and mentally too. I mean, it's,
Right.
it's, it is a very, it is difficult to do, but what's
Right.
interesting to be sitting here now, 6 years into this,
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to say it's not difficult at all, because it's still, I'm still
Yeah.
pulling providers to hit deadlines. It's
Mm-hmm.
tough, but I don't think anymore that it's this impossible thing that society perceives it to be.
Right. Right. Which at the end also we end up believing ourselves, and therefore we kind of drink the same Kool-Aid and we think, well, it's not doable. It's not doable.
Right.
But believing and trying, and I think persistence is a big key. And I see from your story that you're sharing with us, persistence from the very beginning. Just with the Facebook ads themselves, and just trying one thing. Maybe one didn't work. Well, let me tweak it here, let me tweak it there, and just keep persisting, keep moving, and that is a big key as well. Not giving up too early in the game.
Yeah, I think, 75, 80, maybe 90% of this battle is just perseverance.
Right.
It's staying mentally tough and believing in yourself and believing in what you're doing. And yeah,
Yeah.
really.
So when you quit then your job and went back to your studio practice, what is it that you do to kind of gain back the momentum that you had lost?
I started quickly selling on a website called Etsy.
Okay. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And that would have been June, July-ish, 2011. And I still had the numbers, like those 25,000-ish people on Facebook and Twitter didn't just go away. I kind of had to remind them that I was there. But then I was able to leverage that number again and start to make quick sales. And I rode that, I would say, the Facebook wave. And even at this time, I wasn't really showing that much. I wasn't exhibiting. I was not seeking gallery representation. I was just a quiet little artist in Indianapolis, sort of selling to this subtle, following on the internet. And it wasn't until September of 2012 when actually Facebook changed the algorithm, which they show people's posts in everyone's newsfeed. And that was when I realized I had put all my lead generation in one basket, and I put it in the Facebook basket. And when Facebook changed, I realized that, having that number to make sales, it's really good, but I don't control that number at all. I mean, overnight, Facebook changed, and, it was less, my views on post it was less than 10%.
Wow.
Of what it was prior to that day. I have Excel spreadsheet of the data because I was so livid. But I learned a huge lesson that day, that you just can't put all your eggs in one basket. And that's when I decided to shift my business and become internally focused on Indianapolis and specifically this market. Because at that time, my biggest collectors, I had never even shaken their hands or looked at them in the eye. I mean, they were just all over the country, which that isn't a bad thing. But when you're trying to do a show at local Gallery X in your city and all your collectors just can't come, it's hard to make those sales as quick. And so I felt like I needed to build a more stable buying base here in Indianapolis. And that is what I have done for the last 5 years. And I don't want to be boastful or brag or anything like that, but this at my opening reception of my big gallery show this year in 2017, back in March, we sold 72 paintings on opening night.
And that was the one at Harrison Center?
Yes, it was. Yeah. And that is a direct result of being internally focused and building a more stable collector base here locally. And so now, for the first time, I actually am shopping a Chicago gallery show for either late 2018 or potentially early 2019 right now. I'm in negotiations with that. So it's, I feel ready to sort of go outside of this market again. But I feel like it's taken me quite a while to get there.
Yeah. And that's a very smart strategy, starting where you're at, where you belong, where you know the people, and then growing from there outward, creating a strong foundation where you're at, and then expanding from there.
Totally.
Because you still have a long career ahead of you, so you have created a very strong foundation that can help you then move outwardly. And as you build your foundation, you create a network of people too. It's not just numbers, but
Totally.
you have also key people that get to know you, and you get to know them, and they're interested in your career and helping you out. And you just never know how that network also extends to, because somebody then that introduces you to their network, and that just continues a ball that's rolling outwardly.
It is so true. And to that point, I think one of the biggest mistakes I see a lot of, really early career young artists, I just don't know if they have the patience to build their bases strong enough, which I think
Mm-hmm.
that's been one of the bigger differences with me is I've really, uh, I don't want to say flourished, but I've embraced the very slow, steady growth. And
Right.
now, I mean, it's really paying off. I mean, it
Mm-hmm.
really is. So
Right. Yeah, I
it'll be
mean, I think a lot of people, a lot of artists want to see that overnight success or a very quick success, but it takes time. And you are a perfect example of that. It takes time to build, but persistence, tenacity, grit is just what keeps paying off over time. Now, let me ask you this question, Justin. How hard was it for you to then enter into galleries? Because again, you didn't come from an art school. How was that for you, your experience?
so. Um, my gallery experiences have been all over the board, and at this point in my career, um, I have chosen just to do short-term contracts, one-off shows with galleries,
Mm-hmm.
and I've had representation in the past, and it just part of the way I've sort of modeled my business is I
Mm-hmm.
sell really quick. I don't hold an inventory, and I've sort of subscribed to a motto that I read in an art blog post years and years and years ago. And I mean, at the very beginning of the podcast, you kind of mentioned, there's no one right way to do this, and
Mm-hmm.
I've never seen an artist sort of subscribe so disciplined to this motto, but and I don't know if this is smart or not, but it's sell your work for as cheap as you can for as long as you can.
Mm-hmm.
And my first gallery show I did was 2009, and we grossed just under $10,000 at a 50% commission.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that was a big eye-opening experience because I'm like, wait, essentially, I just paid her, almost $4,500 to do this show. And
Mm-hmm.
then I'm thinking about all my experience doing targeted advertising on Facebook where I could have better spent that $4,500 to actually internally build my brand bigger, stronger, and better
Mm-hmm.
rather than helping pay the overhead of a gallery. And so ever since that experience, I have been super selective with how and when I work with galleries. And they're usually always small group shows that, it's a month duration with potentially maybe like a 60-day extension on the pieces that were exhibited, or it's just a solo show. And
Mm-hmm.
I've had representation since that 2009 gallery one other time, and I turned that gallery down several times before I finally negotiated probably one of the best artist contracts that they've ever given, in terms of sales commission and everything. And
Mm-hmm.
partially because I keep really detailed sales analytics, and I showed the math and showed the numbers. I was just, this
Mm-hmm.
is, I sell my work for too cheap right now. And that's partially because, I sell in Indianapolis, and I
Mm-hmm.
don't, I know you're familiar with the market having family here, but it
Mm-hmm.
is, I'm just guessing because I don't sell a lot in Chicago anymore, but it is very, very different than
Mm-hmm.
these bigger markets like a Chicago or New York or LA or Miami
Right.
or, we have money here, but it's just it's a big Midwestern town. And so
Right.
my prices reflect that currently. And so, for now, I've mostly stayed away from representation.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I think you're a very, great example of, taking control of your art career, right? You can give it away and do the traditional model of, knocking on doors of galleries and hoping for the best, or saying, hey, I'm in control of my career. This is what I do. This is who I am, and I'm going to try to do it my way. And it has to make sense for you. So, if you follow the traditional model, may not make sense for you for where you're at for the market that you're trying to reach, and you will not be successful. So I think what you have done is very smart. Is adapting what has worked for you in the past, looking at your market audience that you're trying to reach, and being very good at a strategy and targeting that market, including your price point, and then working with the galleries that only make sense for you, rather than giving away kind of the keys to your production to a gallery, but rather being very selective on who you work with, and then you come in with your own terms,
Right.
versus just accepting what they give you.
Right. And it's, having the walkaway power.
Mm-hmm.
It's good. And I guess just having the confidence and not walking away as an arrogance or an ego, walking away as it just doesn't make good business sense right now in my career.
Mm-hmm.
And here's why: XYZ numbers.
Exactly.
People understand that. I mean, it's a very professional way to approach it.
Right. And I believe there are, being in this for a long time and working with so many artists, and also having a gallery, for me, I believe that there are stages in the art career, right? And whatever you do in this stage of the game has to make sense for you right now. You probably will be changing as you go. Maybe 10 years from now, you'll be at a much higher price point and you'll have a larger market audience, and so you will be adjusting to what makes sense for you right there and at that moment. So, it's looking at where we are in our career, what we're trying to accomplish, how we're going to do that, instead of just copying what everybody else is doing. Because it's so easy right now with social media, right? You see somebody doing one thing, it's like, oh, I'm going to do that. And, we want to do everything that everyone is doing without really taking a good look into where we at, what we're trying to accomplish, who's my audience, and how am I going to get to them, which I think you have done so successfully. And, that shows a lot of, really focus on what you want to do and where you're at. Kind of acknowledging where we are, who we are, and what we have to offer to the world.
Right. Makes sense.
So, Justin, now, what's one of the highlights that you can think of? If you look back to what you have done so far in your career, and I'm in your website, you have so much, many accomplishments from shows. You have been in media, you've been on TV, and you have done, a lot of things in really short period of time, considering you're still young and you have a long career ahead of you. But what are some of the highlights that you look back and say, well, that was really special?
Yeah. So the big out, and this really is going to probably be my personal career highlight for a long time, was I did a historical timeline corporate mural for a company in Northwest Indiana called Urschel Laboratories. Mm-hmm. They actually moved me up there for 3 months, and in their new world headquarters, right in the main entryway, I did a 12-foot by 37-foot wide mural that moved from left to right, sort of from the inception of their company in the early 1900s to the modern day. And for so many reasons, I just felt like that project was so ahead of my time. And because to your point, I mean, I still am a pretty early career artist. And I can vividly remember that was January through March of 2015, just being driving home at night after, a 12-hour day painting on this mural, just almost a disbelief. Am I really doing this? Because they they put a lot of trust and faith in, I had never done anything of that size and scale or importance. And, it's hard to describe to the listeners, but Urschel Laboratories is a family-owned, or was a family-owned company at that time, with this really rich, deep history of just fostering a really strong community. And, just most of the employees that I met that worked there were not just 10-year employees, but 15, 20, 25, 30 years employees, because the company just treated them so well. And I felt like their corporate identity was a very good fit for sort of, I don't know, my personal, I just, they weren't like giant corporations that you sort of like with corporate greed and all the underpaying wages and, what you see society happening. This is kind of the opposite. And I just felt so lucky to be selected to do such a iconic piece for their company. And I don't know. So that was one. I mean, it really, it took 2 months of planning prior to even going up there. So to be able to dedicate, half a year to a single project, and they had the budget to fund it. I mean, that's a dream project. And so, and then most recently, I was able to use that experience, and I just completed a 20-foot wide by 40-foot tall mural for Butler University.
Very cool. Very cool.
And spent most of my summer on that project, and it is. They haven't let me post any progress photos or anything. It's been secret, but it's been fun.
That's great.
So it's turned out good.
That's great. That's so exciting, and being able to finish a project like that and walk away and look back and say, "Wow, that was done." And maybe a few years ago, I didn't think that was ever going to be possible. And being able to walk away and say, "Wow, this happened," and that's pretty exciting.
It is.
Another thing that Justin, that I love from your career and is that you are also sharing some of the things that you're learning along the way and in your website, which later I'm going to ask you to share your website, but you also have a blog. And some of the posts that I really love is when you say like the year 1 of selling art full time, and year 2, year 3, and you have up to 4 years that was your last post on 7 things or a few things that you learn about selling art on your own. And that becomes a resource for other artists who may be starting their career or who maybe have been at it for a while, but they just haven't got any luck with getting their artwork placed and or getting an audience for that, and sharing what you have learned to the community, which is something that struck me from the beginning when we started talking online. And then you mentioned the community in Indianapolis and so forth. Tell me about your interest in being part of an art community and sharing what you know versus saying, hey, I discovered how to do this, but I'm not gonna spread the word because then more competition.
Yeah, I think some artists think of it like that, but I think of it as the opposite, in the sense that I don't think of my other painters as competition, which maybe seems naive because in a weird way they kind of are, but I believe that we are all in this together, and our market is not saturated at all. And that's the way I personally believe, in the sense that even in Indianapolis, in the greater metro area, I mean, there's over 2 million people, and there's just only a handful of artists selling into this crowd. And I've joked sometimes to some of my peers, I wish I could clone me 10 times over, because I think, if there's more artists out there actively selling and fostering their own client base and collector base, I can't tell you how many of my collectors and clients are buying my friend's art now just through organic happening, and so I think a bigger community is a stronger community, and more informed community is a stronger community. And I just think we're all in this together, and I think the way that society generally perceives artists and that stereotype of the starving artist, I think anything that I can do to help break that stereotype is a positive. And I think one of the easiest ways, or a way that I can do that, is by helping other artists succeed. And I think that's the right way to do it,
That's awesome. You said it really nicely. And, that's one of the mottos here at the Art Next Level is when one artist wins, we all win, because culture goes forward, and people need to invest in art. And when they invest in one person, most likely they'll be excited to invest again and again and again. And that is fantastic. Justin, in this podcast, we have artists from all over the world who listen to it, who download it on a weekly basis. And there's a lot of artists probably listening right now, and some of them may be frustrated of not knowing, what to do, how to get their artwork out there. Maybe some of them are starting their careers or just graduating from school, maybe wondering, how am I ever going to be able to do this myself, or maybe others, who have been at it for a while, but they're just struggling to get the word out there. And things have changed a lot from, like you say, when we had this organic reach through social media. Now it's all these algorithms that only pick and choose who gets to see our work, and even online advertisement and Facebook ads, are also more expensive, more difficult as well. And the audience has now kind of become more accustomed to see ads, and it's becoming a little bit harder. What are some of the things that you would advise a young artist who's out there, or maybe not even a young one, maybe an artist in general out there who's kind of struggling to figure things out? If you were to start your career again from zero today, what would be maybe like the 5 or 4 things that you would do to get started?
Yeah, well, I think one of the things I would do quickly is I'd figure out my price points. And the way that I would do that is, well, first I would start selling into my friends, all of them, and figure out where my friends and family and just people I know start giving me money, and quickly. Mm-hmm. And that sort of establishes a baseline, and I would just sort of hit repeat. And I mean, that's kind of the way that I built mine. Mm-hmm. Anyways, the first pieces that I sold in law school, quickly, they were all to my classmates and peers, and they weren't even for that much. It was just $100 each, but it all sort of happened within 2 weeks. And then so I guess to a young artist, I would figure out, where do people give you money? Because sometimes I think artists, they have this perceived value of themselves. Well, I spent X amount of hours on it. I sold a 16 by 20 once for $500. So that's my baseline price. And I just think in the early years, having a hardline approach to how you price work, I think that is, I personally think it's a mistake. I think that's a way to become static and stale and not sell very much. I think a much more organic and fluid way to approach pricing is a better way to go, because you can really learn. And then once you're selling, I would suggest keeping super detailed analytics on, the size that you sold it for, the price that you sell that size. And, even in my last show in March, 12 by 16, I sold it as low as $225 and as high as $900, that exact same size. And a lot of that is based in the understanding of a lot of other things besides just size, marketability, history of sales of that specific subject matter, just diving into the metrics and figure out where I've converted. So yeah, I definitely think just figuring out where people give you money is really important. Yeah, I don't know.
Would you still invest in Facebook advertisements, or you think that's no longer gives you the best results as once used to?
Well, I'm still bitter from 2012. I still spend probably a couple $100 with Facebook a year, just boosting specific posts. Like if I have some like big news or press thing, or something I want to shoot out there, I'll pay to shoot that out. But as far as building a following there and trying to increase the numbers, I wouldn't do that again, and partially because it's just something I don't control. I think what I would do now is build an email list, because people change emails sometimes, but it's a much more stable way to reach out to people. And I think in hindsight, I wish I would have done that, because email lists now, it's not small, but it's not huge like that was. So. And
something, as far as emails too, a lot of people complain, well, people are not reading my emails and so forth. Well, and a lot of that is because sometimes artists just add people to their email list without asking the person, or just, whoever gives them an email, they just add them in there. And of course, if they're not interested in who you are, what you do, why would they read them, right? But I think it's not about having a giant list versus having an accurate list of really targeted people that really do care for you, really do love what you do. They are the ones who are going to read your emails, not the ones who just added to a mailing list. And I think that's, at least in my experience, that's what makes a huge difference in my emails. That I know that every single person that's in there, they have requested to be there, and they like to know what I'm doing. And I think that's that's smart for artists as they listen to this interview, is to look at the different avenues that are out there. What social media used to be with all the organic reach, and now how that has changed, and it's a business, and we participate on that when we join their company. And even though we think it's a free service, it really is not. They are selling our profiles, and that's how they make the money. But it is, at the end of the day, is their sandbox. So whenever they want to change the sandbox, we have no choice. Like you say, we have no control of. But if you have access to your contacts and you have their email addresses or phone numbers or what have you, that is your list. That is list that you own, versus people who are in social. But I think that's great advice, Justin. Thanks for sharing, and for providing us here at the Next Level through this podcast with a great opportunity to hear how you have built your career, in a non-traditional way, and have been very successful at it. And again, you have a lot of things coming up in the future. I've been following you for quite a while too. I've been visiting on your site a few times and seeing your list of upcoming shows and events, and how many exciting things you're doing, your travels and so forth. And this is the career that you chose, that you have control of, and because you have control of it, you can make changes and adjustments as you see them fit. And having that control is really what makes it an amazing career for you. So I want to congratulate you on that, Justin. That's a great story. So Justin, as we get ready to close this episode, can you give us a little bit of information on how can our friends find you on social media, your website, and so forth?
So my website is just my name. It's Justin Vining, V as in Victor, INING.com. And then all my social media, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, it's all Justin Vining. And then I would say I'm most active on Instagram. That's really the platform that, to me, has quietly become some of my best lead generation for selling lately. I mean, it's been really interesting how active people seem to be engaged with the content. And I think as artists, with that being such a visual platform, I think it's been good. What worries me a little bit about that, though, is it's owned by Facebook. So, so that's, I would say, if you want to see the latest with what I'm up to, Instagram would be where to see it.
Very cool. And do you want to share anything that's coming up for you?
So, I have a string of shows. The mural unveiling happens in September. I do a big art fair in September, but an exhibit I'm really looking forward to is in October at the Hoosier Salon in Carmel, Indiana. It's a 3-person show with 2 of the painters that are the biggest influences on my career in terms of painting style. The Hoosier Salon asked me to do a show, and I said if I get to pick the artist I exhibit with, and I picked 2 of my favorite painters, Kyle Ragsdale and Benny Sanders, and awesome. We've been quietly building that body of work already, and I can't wait to exhibit it.
Very cool. That's awesome. Thank you for sharing. And I want to invite our friends also to, when you visit Justin's website, make sure you click on that blog link. Also, check out his blog page and the posts that I mentioned before, because I think they will be very interesting to read as well. So, Justin, with this, I want to close. I want to thank you for your time, for spending time here with us at the Next Level. Any last words you want to say before we close?
Well, thank you. I appreciate the time, and I very much appreciate what you're doing, and I respect the heck out of it. So thank you.
Thanks, man. Thank you so much. And next time you come here to Chicago, let me know. Let's get together.
Will do. Thanks.
Awesome. Well, with this, I want to close, and I want to thank all our listeners of the Next Level podcast, and we'll see you at the next level.
Check out our website at www.theartistnextlevel.com, where you will find our podcast library, learn about our upcoming webinars, find resources relevant to your career, and much more. Thanks for listening to today's podcast, and we'll see you at the next level.